So what we have is a simple C file here, and I have created it, and this is going to print Shriram once. We are going to just print Shriram once here with this C file. But how are we going to compile it, sir? We did not have a Turbo C compiler. We did not have a Dev C++ compiler. Instead, we have got inbuilt available compilers called as package called as GNU C compiler. We have got something called as GCC. GCC is the name of the compiler, and I'm going to tell you the process step by step, and you will visualize what happens when you compile a file. This is very important, and this is all done absolutely by the operating system support. That's one of the very important features we have already highlighted in the previous session. Now see that. Now I'll have to compile this file. What is the command, sir? GCC. GCC is GNU C compiler. GCC, and what is the file name? 1.c. I compiled it. Now I need to see if the executable file is available with me. You can see that a.out is the name of the executable file, and I can run this. How do I run this, sir? We have compiled this. Listen to me carefully. We have compiled this and we are going to run it now. Compilation is the process of converting the normal file C file into an executable file, which is nothing but a file which can be run. So I am going to run it. What is the procedure to run it, sir? ./a.out. You can see that Shriram is printed here. The result has come. Sir, what is the beauty in it, sir? Nothing right now, but we will understand the process clearly. I have not told you the process. Instead, I took a lighter path and the easier path for you to compile the file. Now, what do we do? Very simple. I am going to go ahead with step by step. What is the first step, sir? I will have to convert the C file. I will have to convert the C file into an object file first. What do you mean by this, sir? The C file, whatever you are having here, whatever I have shown here, cat1.c, this is a C file, which means it is a high level language file. It is not the file which can be understood by your processor, and it cannot be run. It cannot be placed on the RAM. Whatever you want to run, you will have to place it on the RAM. Remember it. Whatever you want to execute, you will have to place it on the RAM. Without which it won't be executed. You cannot keep this file right away on the RAM. You cannot ask the processor to read it. The processor won't understand it. Now the point is, we need to convert it to an executable file format, and because of that executable file format only, we can run it. Remember it. This is a very simple and a very important point to be understood. Now let's go ahead step by step. The first step is to get the object file generator. What is that, sir? I am going to generate a file called as object file, and gcc-c 1.c will get me the object file. What do you mean by that? This gcc is the command. It is a compiler. -c tells that the input is a C file. The input is a C file. Now I will get the object file generator here in the same name as the file name. The file name is 1.c. The object file is 1.o. We have generated an object file, which is very important for anybody to understand. And now what will happen is, this object file is machine language file. This is what the machine has generated and the machine can understand. And can we read that content now? What is there in the object file? We need to see that, right? cat1.o. Can you understand anything from this? You cannot understand it because it is not the language for you. It can be understood. It can be understood only by the compiler, only by the machine, not by you. So what do we do next, sir? I have got the object files available with me, but I need to get the final executable file. What is executable file, sir? The one which you can run. This is the executable file. The one which you can run is the executable file. I have generated only the object file now. So what do? We need to make sure that we are generating the executable file properly. How do we do that, sir? Very simple. I will say that right now. gcc-o. What is the first command I used? gcc-c. Why I used it? Very simple. The input was a C file. Now what is the input? The input is an O file. It is an object file. So gcc-o. I can give a name for the executable file. Like you have the name as a.out here, right? Instead I can give the name as Sachin1.o. That's all. Now what happened? This GCC has taken this 1.2 as input, and it has created an executable file by the name Sachin. So we will see if Sachin is really created. Yes, Sachin is created here, and you can see that all the executable files are green in color, and they have got the executable permission here. Read, write, X is execute, X is execute, X is execute. That's it. Why there are 3 times X available? I'll talk about it a little later in the lab session. Don't confuse it right now. So we have got Sachin here. Sachin is an executable file that we have generated, and what happened is we were able to get this object file converted as executable file. Now we can run this executable file easily. That's all. We have run it. We got the output from the file 1.c and we generated an executable file by the name Sachin with GCC. Sir, what did you do earlier, sir? I'll repeat the process, please remember. GCC with just file name will also give you output, but it gives you the output in the name a.out. It is not giving the name, it is not giving the output in the name that you want. It will give in the specified format a.out. So in a particular directory, you can have only one a.out. I cannot have 2 executable files with the same names in the same directory. So this is problematic. So what did I do? I gave the name of the file as gcc-o. Sachin was there already. So let's create Dravid 1.c. Now I am creating Dravid. So this gives me the facility to have multiple executable files in the same directory. So the commands I used are going to be listed here right now. I'll type it for your reference. Please understand, I will also upload this session once the session is over so that you can refer it and try it out in your laptop whenever you have time. The first command I used is gcc 1.c. This gets you the output completely and the output will be in the format a.out. That's it. Now the second command I tried is gcc-c 1.c. This gets you the object file created and the object file is nothing but 1.o. Now I will have to create the executable file gcc-o Sachin from 1.o. So I am creating Sachin and Sachin is to be created from 1.o. So did I create it? Yes, Sachin is recently created here and we got Sachin created. That's it. No sir, I want to do all this in one stroke. How do I do it? gcc-o, you give a name as Dhoni 1.c. That's all. It gets you in one step. I gave you the complete steps one after another which explained you the procedure for the conversion of the normal C file to object file to executable file. It happened and I helped you with that. I also told you how do you generate the executable file directly. How do you generate the executable file with GCC command directly? I told you. So you can try this out in your machine, and to run this we need to type /Dhoni or /Dravid or whatever name you have, you can try it out. It gets you the output. Is it understandable, all of you? Discuss. We will understand the types of the systems. One is parallel, the second one is distributed, the third one is real time, right? We have got 3 types of systems. I hope you are able to see the PPT clearly. And what is parallel? Very simple. We have got multi-processor system. I am going to have multi-process working for me and the task will be taken care of by multiple process and we will get the result there. What do you mean by that, sir? I have got, for example, Intel Core i7 processor which has got 4 cores inside for an instance. I have got 4 processors running inside to do the task. I'll tell you this way. I have got a task to be done and what I do is I assign it to 4 people and all the 4 people cooperate together and they co-work together to get that done, and we call it parallel working. So this will get me better results, and in case one of the persons fail, rest 3 will still run. So that's called parallel. I have multiple resources available, I have multiple tasks to be done, but I make sure that the tasks are split properly and they are given to appropriately to all the available processes, and they are called parallel processing. Distributed. I am sitting here, you are sitting in Chennai, somebody is sitting in Kerala, somebody is sitting in San Francisco. So all those 4 computers come together to work on a particular problem and it can be called networked. We are sitting in different domains, we are sitting in different networks, yet we are able to work on a problem. We can get that way of connections also possible, and for that we need operating system support and we call them as distributed systems. Very simple. And the next one is very important. It is real-time operating system. What is it? Very simple, sir. I drive a car, I apply brake, the car has to stop immediately. If it stops after 5 minutes, you are not going to be alive. So there we need real-time performance. What is real-time? I do not know when I will give input, but I expect output 100% perfectly every time. That is called real-time. Logical correctness of the operation within a deterministic deadline is called real-time. I want 100% perfect answer. I want perfect answer every time I want perfect answer every time in time. I'm not even talking about on time. I'm talking about in time. That is called real time. So these kind of systems are generally discussed about in the operating system topics. We will have parallel, distributed and real-time systems. For an instance, I can tell you whatever you are having in your laptop is called general purpose operating system. You can use it for seeing a PPT, you can use it for compiling a C file, you can use it for conducting Teams meeting. That is called general purpose. The one that you have in the car braking system, aeroplane landing gear, pacemaker or any medical system, they are all called as real-time operating system. Those operating system will ensure that the results are coming in time every time without any delay. That's the most important point that I would like to stress again. You never know when you are going to give input, but still it will be ready to accept the input and it will go on. So remember this very important points. They are all interview questions again. Right. Now we need to understand some more thing. There are types of systems which can be called as single tasking and multitasking system. What is single tasking system? Very simple. They are called embedded systems. I repeat it. The single tasking systems are called embedded systems. What do you mean by that, sir? You are giving new terms here and there. Yes. In the previous slide, I told you what could be the types of the system. I didn't tell you what is the task that they are going to do. They are types of system. They could be parallel, they could be distributed, or they could be real time. But now I am talking about the task that they are going to do. Simple example I will ask you. You have a washing machine. It will only wash clothes. Can it cool the room? You have an AC. The AC can only cool the room. Can it wash your clothes? No, right? You have a camera. Can it cook food for you? They are all called as single tasking system. They are going to do one task specifically and they will use all the available resources for that. And we are calling this as embedded systems. Remember it. They are called embedded systems technically. All these embedded systems will be capable of doing one task repeatedly till end, and that's called embedded systems. And from the operating system perspective, if I can tell you, MS-DOS is a single tasking operating system. Whatever we have in the command prompt, right, it is called a single tasking operating system. But technically speaking, when you grow further, if you talk about a single tasking system, that will be connected to embedded system. I'll clarify once again. From the operating system perspective, from the minimalistic perspective, if you want to refer, MS-DOS can be called as a single tasking operating system. But when you want to learn it higher, when you want to grow a little higher, where you need to relate it properly, you need to call it embedded systems. Embedded systems are all single tasking. They will be doing a task repeatedly, consistently, and they will use all the resources. That's it. They are single tasking. Now multitasking system, what is it, sir? Whatever I have as laptop, as I told you, is general purpose. They are multitasking. What do you mean by that? Now if you see in my machine, I have just opened the Ubuntu application. I have just opened the PPT. I have also got your attendance downloaded. I am also opening Teams meeting here. So what do we do that? We do handle multiple things. We do handle multiple things. And it will be like a parallel processing system where you can do multiple tasks parallelly. That's very, very important, right? It's very, very important and it's pretty easy to understand as well. So remember, the terminologies that I'm talking about here are very important for you to even go for the interview. They will ask you, do you know any system which is single tasking? You can refer that from the hardware perspective, from the product perspective, any embedded system is single tasking. But from the operating system perspective, if you ask me, I can tell you that MS-DOS is the single tasking system, which might not be really useful at this scenario. But as an embedded system, if you see, there are operating systems which are playing role, which we'll discuss later, and it's a separate subject for you. They are also called as single task system. And multitasking system, we have got Linux, Unix, Windows, Windows 2000, Windows Vista, Windows 7, 10, whatever is going to come, all these are multitasking systems which are really capable. Is this understandable till now? The most important hardware components that you are seeing in front of you are all peripherals. They are connected, but they are connected to the system, but they are not just the core components. There are multiple other core components that you may not see it because they are all properly concealed, and they are also important. You are talking about the keyboard, you are talking about the display, the mouse, whatever you are seeing in front of you, even the webcam somebody referred. Yes, all these are the hardware resources that you have, but the most important hardware resource that we need to understand is the CPU. The CPU is going to help us out with getting all the processing done. And the other very important component that we need is memory. We need to store the content into the hard drive. We need to move the content to the RAM because hard drive is for permanent storage, RAM is for execution. Remember it, whenever you are trying to run something, whenever you want to execute a code, all those are possible only when you move it to the RAM. So we need two memory items here. One is RAM, another one is the hard drive. We also have ROM. We will talk about it a little later, but now understand that we have got the hard drive which is meant for the permanent storage, and you must be aware of that. You have a 1 TB hard drive in your laptop or a 500 GB hard drive in your laptop, and we also have a 12 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM in our laptop. Why do we need both? A RAM gets you the speed, RAM gets you the execution possibility. Only when you keep things on the RAM, it will be available for you to be executed, otherwise it won't be run. So memory is very important. Third is disk. What do you mean by disk, sir? Memory and disks both can be connected. I can call that I have got a USB disk, I have got a floppy disk, I have got a compact disk, DVDs. All those can be called as disks, and they are also very important part of it. And the most important part that we are missing altogether is the motherboard. The motherboard has got a lot of components. I have told you this in my first session, I believe. If I remember it right, if I have taken it for you, otherwise I'll have to take it again. So I have explained clearly to my class about the hardware components that are available in the board. I will explain you that if I have not done that, since we are teaching for 6 classes, I'm kind of getting confused now. So the motherboard is a very important component which gives hand and which holds rest of the other components all together, and it ties it tight. I'll show you a session where we can understand all the components in the motherboard very clearly. So hardware, when you see, they are all visible to you. Some of them are invisible to you. Some of them are packed properly and they are concealed as well. So remember, operating system is not standalone. Operating system cannot do anything by itself. It needs hardware. Operating system runs on the hardware. In fact, operating system is stored on the hardware. We need hardware for the operating system to survive. Now, the protection and security aspect of the operating system is very, very important. If you have a login, only you should be permitted with that login, and without a password, you will not be permitted even. And other people should not access your content. That is called security, right? I can access it remote. I should be able to access it personally using the laptop with me, or I should be permitted to access it through VM if needed. Whatever be it, the access permissions must be properly given, and it should protect the content. It should protect the user, and this has to be done properly. If there is a leak, it is going to be a trouble. So the protection and security is very, very important. We are going to talk about the further things in the next class, where you will understand what is interrupt hardware, and exceptions, system calls. And during the system startup, what are all the things that will happen? BIOS, bootloader, kernel program, kernel initialization, all these things will be discussed in the next class. And with that, you will go through the complete fundamentals of the operating system. I hope till now everything is clear. If you have any questions, you can ask me now.